Some of the most common issues I see people encounter when they're trying to pass the guard is not having much of a strategy in terms of how to connect between the different passes. So something that can be common to happen is, just as an example, maybe if I'm trying to throw the legs by here and I go to throw but I can't get all the way past, maybe Emily blocks and puts her foot back in front and squares back up, and then I don't have another move, and we end up in this kind of situation where I'm on top and maybe every so often I try to do one or two moves, but the person can just defend, keep their guard, and then after they recover their guard, I have nothing to connect to, so I end up just back where I started. Another thing that can happen here is that as you try and pass, you expend energy, but you don't really get anywhere. So you kind of repeat this situation of trying to throw, the person's good at defending, I'm trying to get by, but then eventually you start to get a bit more tired, a bit slower, they start to make their grips, you get tied up, and then from here, once you're tied up, you're tired, it's hard to keep your posture, it's hard to keep your base, and then you get swept. So having strategies on top that we understand exactly what we're trying to achieve the whole time can help a lot. So the first thing to pay attention to is that naturally, depending on your body type, you're going to have different styles of guard passing that you're going to be more suited to. So there are lots of different ways that we could try and pass the guard. I could try run around the legs like this. I can try stack and make over-under style passes. You can try and have smash passes and knee cuts. And you can have a close style of pressure passing, to name a few. So depending on what your body type is, you're going to be naturally more set into different methods of passing. So as time goes on and as you train more, you're going to develop stronger and stronger routes to pass. So one of the things that we can do is to recognize, how do we capitalize on the positions that we're most likely to develop over time. So what I find to be useful is, for me, for example, I like to pressure pass. I like to try and crush people. I try and get very close, closing off this gap and pass the half guard. For me personally, I have a good understanding of how the half guard works, how to position myself properly, what are the common things to deal with on bottom, because I train with people who are very good at playing the half guard on bottom. So I know that when I'm passing, if I can get into a half guard position, I'm likely to be able to secure the pass. Similarly, depending on what you like to do, maybe you know that when you get the pant grips, maybe you're really good at going side to side, and maybe you can find your position to finish from. So if we imagine that we have a certain position that we can develop the most out of all the positions that we could be using to pass from, or styles in general, having routes to get there can be really effective. Let's say that the potential for the person to sweep you on bottom falls the more that you get into positions that you can dominate from. So when I'm in somewhere that I'm uncomfortable from, for example, if Emily has both of my sleeves here, I'm way more likely to get swept or submitted than would be the case if I'm in close on a half guard pass, or if I'm in deep on a knee slide. So when we go to connect our guard passes together, being able to bring ourselves into positions that always allow us to connect to our best spots is the basic idea of what we try to achieve. And then from there, naturally, on the way to get there, we're going to get tied up with various different roadblocks. So having ways of dealing with those roadblocks can be very useful. The details I'm going to show are things that I personally like to do, but the concepts are useful whether you like to pass like this or not. So the basic idea of what we're trying to achieve can be useful regardless of what you want to do in terms of specific passes. So the first thing is how to get your opponent defending. So when I'm trying to pass the guard, if my opponent is attacking and I start to run side to side, I'm probably going to fall over. So somebody who's good on the bottom with their open guard can roll you over quite easily. An example might be here is, what happens if I get tied up, but I'm still really aggressive in trying to pass? So now we're in a situation where my opponent is able to be aggressive and start to attack, And if I don't have very many options to actually try and deal with this situation, all I'm going to do is run around mindlessly until eventually I get swept. So I might be trying to run here, and if enemy knows what she's doing, because she's able to attack, she might bring herself into the X guard here, and then I'm still trying to move and I'm still trying to get out, but I'm just giving up the sweep as I go. And you see, the issue here is that I'm in a position where I'm forced to defend, and she has the opportunity to attack. So all of the moves that she's thinking about are moves that she can use to attack and sweep me with, whereas for me on top, I'm more so just moving for the sake of moving without very much specific strategy. So the first thing we have to understand is the idea of getting our opponent to defend. So in this situation here, okay, if I end up with both of my sleeves tied up, I'm not going to try and run around, or I'm not going to try and lean my weight forward. I'm first of all going to try and settle my base and then try and undo the position, okay? So generally, if somebody brings you into spider guard, they're probably going to stretch one leg out like this and try and really put tension on the sleeves. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is to actually try and sit my weight back slightly. A simple thing you can do is actually take your toes off the mat, because that puts your weight into your heels. So first of all, I know that I can bring myself back. I'm going to try to keep my hips low, my elbows close to my body, and then I'm going to start to try and move from side to side. This forces the person to have to react, and as they react, this will give you small amounts of space to try and undo the position. So let's say, for example, as I go to the right here, Emily's going to have to follow me and extend the leg. So I know that if I continue to move side to side, she's going to have to change her legs to be able to deal with this. As long as I'm not putting my weight forward, and as long as I'm not giving up any further grips, she's controlling for the moment and she's not attacking. So when we move side to side here, I'm going to start to begin to find routes to be able to pop off these grips and get rid of some of the control. Now from here, this is how I learned to budget my energy. So you can recognize when you're on top, what are the positions that when you invest time into trying to move from, will you force the person to defend? If I have both of my sleeves tied up here and I just try and throw, this isn't going to do anything for me. If I bring my weight back and I start to move side to side, forcing me to have to react here, as this move from side to side happens, I'm going to be able to get rid of these grips. And now from here, when I start to try and move, I'm going to have much more success in being able to at least connect to a position that I can start to bring her defending and allowing me to initiate a sequence where I can begin to pass with, where I can begin to connect to a pass, where I can begin to connect to a position maybe where I can start to try and finish the pass. There's lots of different situations that we can end up in, but having a basic understanding of what are the common things that the person on bottom is going to try to do that are going to get in the way of me being able to get into a position I want is the most important part of this, of how we connect our positions together. So another really simple example might be the lasso. People with a good lasso will play like this all day. Even if you only give them one sleeve, someone who's very flexible or has strong legs and is able to hold the lasso like this will just do this to try and maintain their guard. So something simple that we can think about here, for example, or this is what I think about with the lasso in my head, is that I'm always trying to get the foot either across or off. And I have two options of doing that with different grips. My main goal when somebody goes lasso like this is I want to get them into the half guard. I know if somebody's a good lasso player, they're probably not going to be very good at playing the half guard. So if I can get to the half guard, my experience level is going to overtake their experience level in terms of my ability to attack versus their ability to defend. So just a simple thing here, I get caught in the lasso, okay, I'm going to try and isolate the free leg like this. So even if there's this grip here, my first thing is I have to try and isolate this leg. When I do isolate the leg like this, I'm going to try and bring my weight into the lasso and see if I can step over here. Now from here, when I know that this leg is isolated, the person has much fewer options in terms of how to try and sweep me or how to try and control me. So now I can start to make some roads forward to get into the half guard. So for example, from here, if we end up and start to bring ourselves into a position with a knee slide as the person has the lasso, a lot of their sweeps are beginning to be shut down because they're losing one leg, especially if I sit on it. If I can find a second collar grip like this and pull myself forward, even though I may not unwind the lasso, putting the weight on the person's legs is going to tire them out. From here, there's two routes that we can move towards. Either I can bring the foot across my body, in which case now, if I bring this foot across the body, I know that for them to get their leg free, which they will want, is going to expend a lot of energy. So if I can maintain this position, them opening their legs out are going to expend huge amounts of energy in the outside of their hip and the muscles around their like glutes and their hip flexors that will get tired over time if you keep your weight on them. So I can try and maintain this position. Sometimes you can unwind this hand here and just generally try to smash the legs together. Or more common than that is this weight will force the person to try and open their leg out. We can try and get rid of this. We can try and bring this off. And then as we get rid of the leg here, they're probably going to make a big effort to push you away. But as they push you away like this, now is the time to start to try and connect, because we know that the person's legs are tired. They're probably not going to want to bring themselves back into the lasso position. And because they're starting to defend, we can start to connect, and then maybe we can eventually bring ourselves back into the knee slide without having to deal with that lasso position. So we can get extremely detailed in terms of how we unwind these positions and how we deal with various specifics, and that's part of the game. But the main idea is that we have a position we're focused on trying to achieve. We have a route of getting there. We know what the common methods for the person on bottom to block us are. And then from there, we have a number of different methods of undoing those, or getting past those different roadblocks that they can try and put in our way when we do want to get to our primary position. The next thing is have a general idea of what to do when we end up in situations where we're not sure about how to deal with them. So there's almost an infinite number of different variations of what the person can do with their guard. So we need to have a basic understanding of what it is that we can do in situations where we don't fully understand what's happening. So a way that I like to think about this is I'm generally going to try and control both the legs. I'm generally going to try and stuff one leg, and then I'm usually going to try and grab a collar, and I'm going to try and grab a crossface. So I'm usually going to try and control both the legs. I'm usually going to try and stuff one leg. I'm usually going to try and grab a collar, and then I'm usually going to try and grab a crossface. So for me, this route that goes forward means that I can enter into this kind of funnel of positions that get closer and closer to the half guard from anywhere. And if it doesn't work, I can always go back to the start. So if we're dealing with someone who maybe plays half guard on the side that we're not used to passing on, and maybe is really good at playing with grips that are kind of unorthodox. So sometimes people might play with like a cross grip like this, and they might play reverse De La Riva, or they might just not let you get the collar grip like this. Or something that can happen is this hand, if they keep breaking this grip away and they don't let you control the collar, okay, then we need to have a new entry into the sequence to be able to connect to the half guard. So just a really simple example here is, okay, I'm trying to take this hand into the collar. I can't make my collar grip. I can't really move my leg forward. I'm going to wait till they break this collar grip. And as they go to break here, I'm going to switch this to the back leg. I'm going to pin the legs as I step out. And I'm going to bring myself back onto the other side and try and throw the legs like this. As we go to throw the legs, I know the person's going to turn in. So as they turn into face, I'm going to let them turn in, and I'm going to try and switch myself over, making the collar grip on the other side, and then bringing ourselves in to the half guard. So this is, again, getting more and more detailed, but the point being is that we have a general strategy so that we know, okay, these are the general steps that it takes for us to get into our style of passing that we're most familiar with, so we can at least have a route to get there, even when we're in situations where we don't fully understand what to deal with. So worst comes to worst for me, if I'm in a position where I'm not totally sure about how to get myself into a half guard pass, I go back to both hands onto the pants, move side to side, stuff one leg, grab the collar, grab the crossface into the half guard, and then start to pass. The next thing we need to have is an ability to connect positions in a way that suits us, so that we know, okay, when I go from step 1 to step 2, the person's probably going to have defenses for the first attempt, the second attempt, maybe they'll have a defense for the third attempt. So I'm going to probably need to have 4 different positions that I can connect to before I'm going to be even able to pass. Something that I feel is really common here is going from leg drags into jumping passes, because what happens is when you try and leg drag someone, they turn their hips in, you can jump to the other side. So what, just as a really simple example here is, okay, first thing that we can try to do here is to see if we can at least move ourselves out from one side to the other. So really simple one that I like to try is see if you can just do a leg drag on one side, and I know, okay, there's probably going to be 3 or 4 moves before I actually finish the pass if the person's good. So an example of such a sequence might be, and again there's many different options of ways that you could have them, but this, you just need to know a couple for what's most common for your body type. Might be here is to go leg drag, so you go hand to the outside of the knee and I guide the ankle across and I try and drag the leg across. Now if you could finish from here, this would be great, but most people who know what they're doing are going to open their knee out, they're going to pull this knee in, and then they're going to try and face their hips back forward like this. Usually they'll try and pull their foot all the way across the body like this. So I go step 1 here to try and leg drag and they turn back in. I'm going to have step 2 and I'm going to start to bring myself forcing into the half guard. Step 3 is going to be to try and bring the knee all the way across into the knee slide, or the full cross face to finish like this. So step 3 is going to be pressure, 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 and try to bring the full cross face in like this. People who are good are going to react by pushing away, and maybe they'll push so far away that they bring their bottom leg free, and as this happens, this is a really easy time to jump and finish the leg drag on the other side. So if you notice there's 3 or 4 steps, but what happens, the actual dynamic of what's happening here is that we're going from the person on bottom, trying to set up grips, trying to attack, but we make the first move and we initiate the offense. As we initiate the offense, we can start to predict what are the moves the person on bottom will have to do to be able to keep their guard as we start to attack. So we know, just in this example here, as we do the leg drag, the person has to turn the hips in. As they turn the hips in, we're able to step over the leg. As we step over the leg, because we have strong grips, we're probably going to be able to force in. As we start to force in, this is going to make them have to push away to keep their guard. When they keep their guard like this, unless they want to be put back into the same pressure position, they have to take their foot free. As they take their foot free, this is a good time to try and bring it back to the other side and finish the leg drag on the other side. And all throughout that sequence, if they fail at any of those steps, you're going to pass their guard. So if they're not very experienced, you're probably going to get them on step 1. If they're more experienced, you probably get them on step 2. If they're more experienced again, you probably get them on step 3. And if they're more experienced again, you probably get them on step 4. And if you don't have anything after step 4, but they have something after step 4, they're probably going to start to control you and then sweep you. So being able to build out your game, understanding exactly what the moves that you want to do are and what the positions where you're most effective in are, is really important. Recognizing the common roadblocks that you're going to face as you try to pass, and then figuring out ways of dealing with them is essential to be able to at least move towards the general position that you want. Having a strategy that allows you to be able to adapt to what the person on bottom does, even if you don't fully understand it, is the next part of the game that needs to be developed. So you understand, okay, these are the common grip sequences that I have to connect to get there. Here's a general way I can move if I don't know what to do properly, or here's a general sequence that I can try and attack even if I'm not totally sure what to do with. And then the final thing is recognizing the steps you have to connect to and the reactions the person on bottom has to use to be able to actually set up and finish the guard pass.